idiot is what he is. He's an idiot for getting us into this war. He's listened to with the Israeli intelligence. Part of the reason why we got into the war in Iraq in the first place, we had George W. Bush that got us into an ill-advised war. Name me the last Democrat president that got us into an ill-advised war. Why is it always Republicans, and why is it Donald Trump that's doing it? Thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm excited to take responsibility for anything you're angry at Donald Trump about and defend him.
Well, I definitely don't put all the responsibility on you, even though you do tend to agree with almost everything that he does. But let me start by asking you this. In regards to this ceasefire that Donald Trump wanted to take credit for last night, there are many in the MAGA cult, as I call it, that wanted to give him this Nobel Peace Prize. And then a few hours later, Israel attacks Iran. Don't you think it was a little bit too early to celebrate?
I don't think so. I think the whole world should be celebrating. I mean, look, Israel, there's a lot of people in this country, I'm sure a lot of your viewers, who were pretty adamant about seeing an end to the conflict between Hamas and Israel and wanting to see a ceasefire there. Iran being the backer of all of these proxy groups that have attacked Israel, and whether it be Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, Palestine, and all these places, Iran was always the main boss, right? And that is inevitably where the October 7th offensive led, back to Iran. Of course, there's the argument that they were trying to keep Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. But at the end of the day, peace between Israel and Iran, and as a result, peace between a lot of nations and Israel, is very good for the world, and it's very good for a lot of people. It stops a lot of needless death and casualties. So if Trump is able to, look, let's see if the ceasefire holds. It has been relatively... Yes, there have been attacks since the deadline, but they're relatively limited, and compared to the way the war was since 12 days ago, or 13 days at this point, the offensive on both sides has certainly slowed down. So there is at least a decline in attacks. Lives are being saved, and that's thanks to Donald Trump and his decisive action. So I don't know how anybody could be upset that the president is trying to usher in peace between Israel and Iran and saving lives.
Well, because that's not really what happened. In the last 24 hours, Iran sent bombs into Israel, killing people in an apartment complex. Israel then retaliated after the ceasefire was put in place. There is absolutely no evidence that our attack on Iran and the bombs that we put in place in Iran actually did the job. The chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
What was the job? What was the job?
The job was to end the further of nuclear capabilities, which, by the way, Tulsi Gabbard said under oath 2 months ago they were actually not doing. And then Donald Trump said
she also said in June, Brian, she also said in June that she no longer shares that assessment, and she supported the president.
So where's the evidence to that, and what has changed in the last 2 months?
I'm not access to that to any. Look, we're at the weapons of mass destruction argument then, I guess, because I don't have access to classified briefings.
Well, guess who gave the United States faulty classified information when we were told that there were weapons of mass destruction?
We talking about Iraq? Oh, God.
Yeah,
we're not going to disagree on Iraq. That was a needless war based on fake information.
Guess who gave us faulty intelligence? Guess. Take a wild guess.
What, Donald Trump?
The Israeli government. Okay. And Donald Trump is the guy who's not listening to our own intelligence, but is listening to the Israeli government and Bibi. And because of that, right now we're in a situation, we're involved in another war. We're not
involved in a war, actually. Brian, look, and I'm looking at this as objectively as possible and I always try to see your argument. But in this case, Israel has said now you could disagree with whether or not Israel had the right to attack Iran 12 days ago. That's a totally different conversation. But 12 days ago, Israel did a very, it was a pretty significant strike, almost a decapitation strike in Iran, taking out almost everybody involved with the nuclear program. They said their initial stated goal was to ensure that Iran would not have a nuclear weapon. That was 61 days, by the way.
How is this not a war, though?
I'm explaining it. That was 61 days after Trump gave Iran a deadline to come to the table and figure out a way to ensure that Iran would never have a nuclear weapon. Iran said no. 61 days later, Israel commences its assault on Iran. Now, 12 days after that, right, there was argument, speculation, whether or not the United States was getting involved. There was a lot of people in the MAGA circle, and they were against any war or getting involved in Iran. There was a lot of infighting that's still going on about whether or not they were supporting the president if we were going to engage in any offensive. And you remember when he said within 2 weeks, we'll make a decision. Over the weekend, then you saw the B-2 bombers take out those nuclear sites. Now, here's the reality. Israel wouldn't have stopped until they were able to effectively ensure that the nuclear sites were destroyed, and or the international community would have placed somehow stopped Israel from taking any action, which hasn't been successful in the past. You've seen them condemn,
and there's no
Israel
evidence that our attacks were successful either. So I'm still trying to understand
how. What happened 24 hours after the attacks? What happened? The ceasefire that you're saying didn't last. Literally, we're on the yes, the ceasefire isn't perfect, but the hostilities between Israel and Iran have all but stopped as of now, by the way. Yes, there were some strikes.
What do you mean it's been? What do you mean it's stopped? I mean, hours ago there were attacks by both sides. I don't know how you can say, well, everything's great now. It's stopped.
The massive barrages and offensives have all but. You have to at least admit today is not the same of yesterday with respect to Iran and Israel. And this morning, Trump took a very hard stance against Israel and said he wasn't happy that they were continuing to attack Iran.
Yeah, he said he wasn't happy.
How are we at war if the president doesn't want Israel to attack Iran? I'm confused on this.
He said he wasn't happy with Vladimir Putin either. That seems to be working very well. By the way, Israel just struck a radar. Yeah, he's definitely trying very hard. 24 hours. Israel struck a radar site north of Tehran literally hours ago, and now.
That was in response to the ballistic missile that Iran launched, and the president.
Donald Trump was the guy that was bragging about a ceasefire, and now he's swearing and putting out vulgarities in front of the media this morning.
He was pissed off, Brian, and you understand this because you get angry. He was
angry. I'm not the president of the United States, and I'm not dealing with a war.
I don't mind that he said the F-bomb. It's better than the other bombs. The reality is he was angry because he wants peace. He wants peace between Iran and Israel. Yeah. He has said that's his stated goal.
I think he wants a peace prize. I think he certainly wants that peace because I think he makes it about himself.
I understand you don't like Trump, and I understand you're angry with Trump, and I understand that there is a lot of policy disagreements you have. You question his moral integrity. I get all of that.
No, I don't question it. The man has no moral integrity.
Fine. You don't like him. I get it. Your audience doesn't like him. I get it. But how can anybody be upset that he's trying to bring about peace between Israel and Iran? How can anybody be upset by that? How can anybody
be upset that he's been trying to bring peace to Ukraine?
How can people be upset by that, Brian?
I'll tell you why. I'll answer that. Because
what about between Pakistan and India? Were people upset that he's there too?
Because he's a liar, and everything that happened under Joe Biden, you guys blamed him for. And Donald Trump said, and he campaigned on the fact that he would be a peaceful president and he wouldn't start any new wars. And then all of a sudden, when we bomb another country,
any wars. Yes, you're not at war with Iran.
And what would you call somebody, another country that bombed us? Would we not be at war with them if somebody did the same thing to the United States of America, David? That is absolutely ridiculous.
In order for us to be at war, as a lot of the Democrats in Congress has pointed out over the last 48 hours, in order to go to war, Congress has to vote on a declaration of war.
And
Congress
he didn't
has not voted on a declaration.
And why? Because Donald Trump defied our Constitution.
No, dude,
and you're defending it.
Every president since the 1940s has defied Congress then.
Really? George W. Bush,
Clinton and Bush and Obama and Biden, they all used the war power doctrine to carry out strikes in the Middle East.
George W. Bush didn't ask for Congress's approval?
No. Now, when you say asking for approval, let's be very clear. The War Powers Act requires Congress to be informed that the president is taking action as commander-in-chief of the armed forces. He notified members of Congress, whether or not they picked up the phone, whether or not they all knew about it. The Congress was notified. The war doctrine was applied correctly in this case. Now, you could disagree with the war doctrine and suggest that no president should be able to carry out an attack against a foreign government without a declaration of war from Congress. But now you have to go and undo decades of foreign policy and Supreme Court precedent. So I don't see how that makes sense here. Usually you're really spot on with your arguments, and it's hard for me to kind of contradict them. But in this one, I'm really having a hard time seeing your point.
Well, listen, it's very simple to me. You say that this is, regardless of whether we get into semantics, and by the way, he didn't offer Congress the ability to vote on this.
They don't have the right to vote on it. It's not their duty under the Constitution.
Okay. Well, if you care about the Constitution, we can get into that and how Trump's defying it. But with that being stated, the bottom line here is that we decided to bomb positions in Iran.
Yes.
The bottom line is that we have involved ourselves in this war. Now, if you don't think we are at war, you have the supreme leader who has threatened the United States, who has threatened that there will be retaliation against the United States of America. So my question to
How
you
do you
is,
feel about that?
it's horrible, but guess what? Trump has put us now in this position. So if we do have terrorist attacks, and there are terrorist cells in this country,
How did they get in?
do you blame Joe Biden or do you
How
blame
did they
Donald
get
Trump?
in the terror cells in this country?
So
How
it's
did
how
they
they
get
in.
here?
So you won't put any responsibility on Donald Trump then?
The
You
only
blame Joe
response
Biden.
I am crediting Donald Trump for bringing peace to a region that doesn't look like they could ever have peace. And if Donald Trump is able to get Iran and Israel to stop shooting missiles at each other, that is a good thing, and lives are saved.
Has he done that?
Yes. And respect, yes, he has. And with
How's
respect,
he done that?
how has he done that? Because he has brokered a ceasefire between the two countries.
2 hours later, Israel broke it. How is that?
Is that Trump's fault, or is that Israel and Iran's fault?
You're giving Trump
they're
credit
not honoring the agreement they made with the U.S. president.
You're giving Trump credit for something that crumbled in 2 hours. Why would you give him credit for that?
We'll see. It's not going to crumble. And when lives are saved, Brian, let me ask you: in a week from now, if Israel and Iran are no longer at war a week from now, will you have me back on to apologize and say, okay, fine, it worked?
So first of all,
it might not be done in 24 hours, but we're on the path to peace thanks to Donald Trump.
Okay, I don't know where you get that from based on the fact that they broke a ceasefire in 2 hours, and you saw how angry
they had 24 hours to stop. They had 6 hours each to do whatever they had to do. That was the agreement in the ceasefire. There was an understanding that operations were going to continue.
A ceasefire means no more attacks. Yes, it does. A ceasefire is given a timeline where there are literally no attacks. That's the definition of what a ceasefire is. And Israel struck a radar site north of Tehran hours after the ceasefire was put in place. That is the actual definition of breaking a ceasefire. Okay. And I can't believe you would actually praise Donald Trump for that.
How many ceasefires has there been?
I can't believe it.
How many ceasefires has there been between Iranian terror proxies and Israel? Just
what does that have to do with you're moving the goalpost? I'm
not moving the goalpost. I'm giving you a comparison because it's important to understand that just because they say, okay, we're gonna have a ceasefire. There were ceasefires between Ukraine and Russia that broke down. But the point is, just because ceasefires aren't always honored by the countries at war, the fact that we were able to get to a ceasefire means something. People have to be happy about that. That means Iran has already said, we're agreeing to the ceasefire. Israel said, we're agreeing to the ceasefire. Now, while they keep lobbing missiles at each other, that's
Iran has not said that.
Iran has. They acknowledged the ceasefire yesterday.
They acknowledged it. There was nothing put in place where the supreme leader said, okay, we agree to a ceasefire. Benjamin Netanyahu broke the ceasefire hours later. So I don't know where you're getting the fact.
What do you want out of this? I mean, are you hoping that Israel continues to bomb Iran continues to bomb civilians in Israel? And are you hopeful? Hold on. And are you hopeful that they carry out a terrorist attack in the United States with terror cells that came in illegally under Joe Biden? Are you rooting for this just so you can say, ha, Donald Trump?
That's a ridiculous statement. The last thing I want are terrorist attacks in this country, and we wouldn't be getting this threat from Iran if Donald Trump didn't decide to do it.
Iran hates America. They chant death to America even before Donald Trump was president. So
you're saying the supreme leader would have put out this threat if Donald Trump didn't attack Iran a few days ago? Is that what you're saying?
Iran threatens the United States all the time. First of all, they threatened the United States after we didn't order Israel to stand down in their aggressions against the Palestinian people. They threatened the United States. They have been threatening the United States for decades. This isn't new. Iran funds the Houthis in Yemen that attacks U.S. ships. How many times has the U.S. military been assaulted by Iranian proxies?
Can you name me a time where the supreme leader threatened the United States of America under the Joe Biden administration?
Supreme leader. Brian, it is time that we hold Iran accountable for the bad actions that they've carried out for the last few decades. Now, Iran has the right to be...
Has Donald Trump held Vladimir Putin accountable, or has he called Zelensky a dictator? Has he held Russia accountable? Has he held North Korea accountable?
As you know, yes, he has.
Really?
Listen, Trump was the first U.S. president to actually cross into North Korea, met with Kim Jong-un to get him to stop launching missiles. And guess what? Kim Jong-un stopped testing missiles. Right. But that's diplomacy. He sat down with Putin. Yes, there's some arguments and disagreements about how the war is going to end, but he's talking to them. These are all good things. How can any of this upset you? I don't understand.
How could any of this upset me?
Compared to Joe Biden. What did Joe Biden do? to
I
end.
can name you a lot of things that
Oh,
Joe Biden did.
please do.
And I can tell you that there
Yeah.
were a lot of false promises under the Trump administration. First of all, he ran on the fact that he would end the war in 24 hours. He's no closer.
He's tried. He's tried.
Oh, well, he's tried. Okay,
Well,
so
he's
let's
not
give the
he's
benefits.
not the world dictator. He can't go and tell Iran he has to. Or
He's a wannabe dictator, that's for
Right?
sure. You
Do
see
you
what's
want
going
him
on
to
with ICE
bomb-
agents around the
do you
country?
want him to bomb Russia? Should we bomb Russia to get him to stop fighting Ukraine?
This
What
is
can
the
we
guy-
do?
This is the guy who said he would end the war in 24 hours.
And
not
he's working
me.
very hard to do it.
He's working very hard for a promise that was unfulfilled.
He has
Listen to what you're saying.
representatives literally talking to Russia constantly to try to negotiate a peace
And every single
agreement.
day, and how's that working out? Every single day where Donald Trump says that Vladimir Putin wants peace, there's another airstrike where innocent women and children die. And the bottom,
Do you want us to go to war with Russia to stop that?
what I
How
want
do
is
you propose
what
to
I
fix
want-
that?
what I want is a president who is not on his knees with Vladimir Putin every
He's not
single
on-
day.
He's on his
Oh,
knees
really?
with Vladimir
Sending
Putin
him-
now.
He's brilliant.
Russia.
He's smart. Sending him COVID test kits in the middle of
All right.
COVID. Oh, that bad Vladdy, knock it
Tell
off.
me.
Knock it
Tell
off,
me.
Vladdy.
I want to know how many people in your audience honestly think that if Joe Biden was still president, we would be any closer to peace between Russia and Ukraine, have anywhere near peace between Iran and Israel, because we know that Joe Biden and Barack Obama helped fund the Iranian terror operation. So tell me how
First
any
of
of this.
all, First of all, those assets were frozen, so that's not true. What you just said, those
it's not
assets were frozen.
The
Joe
pallet
Biden
of
froze
cash
those
that Obama
assets.
gave Iran, was it cold when he dropped it off? Did it come out of the freezer?
That's not true. And if you want to
Okay.
talk about money and money that's sent from our government to other countries, we can certainly have that
And
conversation.
we'll agree on it. Nobody
back
should get our
in time.
money.
But the bottom line
Yeah.
is those assets were frozen and they were used for
Okay.
supposed to be used for certain specific things, not what you are referring to. And that's why Joe Biden froze
So
those
we just
assets.
trusted
that's
Iran
number
not
one.
to use it to fund their terror.
Well, I guess we're trusting Benjamin Netanyahu and we're trusting Vladimir Putin, right? We're
Let me
trusting
tell you
North
something.
Korea.
Israel is an ally of the United States. Iran is not.
And
If
is
you
Ukraine
tell
an
me-
ally of the United States?
If you have to ask me who I'm going to trust more, Israel or Iran, it's going to be Israel.
didn't say we had to trust Iran, but it doesn't mean that we have to trust Israel either. And
Why
you're
not?
talking about trust, and it appears as though Donald Trump has given more trust into Vladimir Putin than he has Zelensky, based on just his actions and
The
behavior.
United States government has given Zelensky $400+ billion.
Because his country was invaded by Putin. That's why.
Okay.
There's a difference.
Okay, so the United States government has supported Ukraine against my objections. I don't think we should be giving any money to anybody to fight wars. This should be their own problems. But that being said, your argument is that Trump is bending to Putin because of what? What do you want us to do? What outcome are you hoping for? A complete withdrawal of Russian forces and what?
Well, first of all, number one, to stop praising Vladimir Putin and say he wants peace, because clearly that's a lie.
So should you call him a murderous dictator like Biden did, and that would somehow bring peace and negotiation? I don't understand.
Here's I think the main point that I don't think you understand is you need to rise up against evil, murderous dictators, and you don't coddle
How do we
them.
rise up, Brian?
Well, you force them to give us some sanctions and give up some sanctions. Can you tell us what did Putin give up? What are the sanctions? What did they give up?
What did they give up? I'm
what is Russia giving up in this war? What have they said at the table? Ukraine has made offers and they wanted to sign a ceasefire. Can you tell us what Russia is willing to give up? What has the great negotiator negotiated with Vladimir Putin to this point since day one when he said the war would be over in 24 hours? Can you name me one thing?
I don't know what has been negotiated.
Because nothing's been negotiated and Putin hasn't signed anything. That's why. That's your brilliant negotiator. You said the war would be over in 24 hours and all I have to do is pick up the phone. He has negotiated nothing. Putin has given up nothing. And in this Iranian war right now, there's a reason why Kristi Noem put us on a 90-day terror watch in this country. It's because Donald Trump decided to get us into a war, because that's what it is.
Not in a war.
If any other country did to us what we did to Iran,
you love America, right? I know you're angry because you love this country and you want.
I love America, and I hate what Donald Trump is doing to this country.
And I understand that. And I understand that. But here's the deal. The terrorist cells that are supposedly in this country that came across an open border while Joe Biden was president.
We don't know that.
Well, they didn't get here under Donald Trump. We have
How do you know
literally
that?
nobody was
that?
released into the
Not
country
true.
last
Not
month
true.
under Donald Trump. It is true.
How
Get
many
right from
people were
GHS.
how many people were put in the country when Donald Trump first go around his first 4 years? How do you know whether cells are in this country under Trump?
Yeah,
or
maybe they've been here for 50 years. The point is,
no, Trump was in office 5 years ago.
fine,
What are you
Trump
talking about?
opened the borders to all the Iranian terror
Didn't
cells.
say that. Didn't say that.
Just say that
You're
for a
making a
second. I'm
gross
gonna say that.
assumption.
No, I'm going to say let's just use that for the sake of argument. If there are terror cells here in the United States from Iran, right? And Iranian government tells their terror cells to attack innocent American civilians because Donald Trump took out some nuclear enrichment sites where there was 0 casualties, then you would be like, this is Donald Trump's
Where's your
fault,
evidence that he
not an
took out-
evil regime that's targeting
Hold on,
innocent
hold on.
Americans?
Hold on, I'll get to that.
How
Where's
do you
your
love
evidence?
America and somehow justify that threat?
Where's your evidence that they took out all the nuclear sites? Because J.D. Vance, our vice president, is even admitting, along with
then we're not
others.
at war. We didn't do it. If we didn't do it,
No,
then we're not
no,
at
no,
war.
no,
There's
no.
nothing to worry
Just
about. We didn't
because
take
you-
out anything.
Just because you throw bombs at another country and you don't take out what you're trying to take out
Yeah, so we
doesn't
missed.
mean it's not an act of war. It
We
means
didn't do
that you didn't accomplish what you were
maybe
trying
we
to
didn't.
accomplish.
So then we have nothing to worry about, Brian. So then he dropped some big ass bombs in the middle of the desert and nothing happened. And as a result, still Iran and Israel are discussing peace. It's a win-win. No damage. Everybody wins. Everybody's at peace.
Have you not seen what Kristi Noem put in place with this 90-day terror watch in this country?
Should he not tell
Nothing
Americans
to worry
to be
about?
vigilant because
Nothing to worry
there are
about?
terrorists trying to kill us? What is your objection to that, Brian?
So we might have not taken out what we thought Trump was trying to take out. And by the way, there's no evidence. They have no idea.
Yeah, we didn't do it.
But that's okay.
Whatever.
If we missed or didn't accomplish anything, no harm done. Let's just move on. And if Joe Biden did the same thing, you would be losing it. You would be losing it. It's so ridiculous.
Okay. Well, I've never been a hypocrite on your show. I have always been honest. And when I don't know stuff, I tell you, you can assume that I would be losing it. But if I was losing it, it would be fact-based. But that being said, assuming that bombs were dropped, let's assume for a second we didn't hit the targets and we didn't do what Donald Trump said. We didn't obliterate the nuclear sites. Let's assume he's just lying, right?
Well, the vice president also admitted that. So I just want to be clear. By the way,
if that's the case, Brian,
the chair of the Joint Chiefs,
that's the case, we have nothing to worry about then from terror attacks. Because wouldn't you be really upset if Iran activated terror cells to kill innocent civilians? If Donald Trump literally didn't do anything to Iran?
So what you're saying is, if there's an attempted assassination or an attempted
to assassinate Donald Trump, is that not an act of war? When they attempted to assassinate Iran, literally people were arrested.
So we shouldn't be upset on that.
There is an Iranian fugitive still on the run in Iran that was involved in a plot to assassinate a U.S. president.
But going by your own logic, we shouldn't go after those people or be upset. No harm done because they didn't execute. You're saying if you don't execute your plan, but your goal is to do this, this, and this, but you don't execute it, no harm done.
You suggested that Kristi Noem warning Americans of possible enhanced terror threats due to the threats made by Iran against innocent American civilians.
No, due to the bombs that Donald Trump dropped.
Right, because, I'll go back up. Because Donald Trump dropped bombs, whether or not the attack was successful, that increased the risk to Americans for terror cells in the United States.
No direct evidence that Iran was directly, there's zero evidence, by the way, that Iran was, has the nuclear capabilities.
Okay, but that doesn't take away my question to you. My question to you was, because Trump bombed Iran, and as a result, Iran activates or threatens to activate terror cells in the United States to target innocent Americans, Kristi Noem shouldn't warn people of an increased risk.
I never said that Kristi Noem shouldn't warn people.
So what is your issue with her?
My issue is not with the warning. My issue is this wouldn't have even been put in place, and we wouldn't have had these threats if Donald Trump didn't decide to get involved in this war.
So
that
Iran
is
wasn't a threat to the United States at all.
There's no evidence, no direct evidence.
No evidence. So
Show me.
So the attempted assassination against Donald Trump, that doesn't count.
You're
that happened before the bombs.
The reason why they did this, and according to the Trump administration, to Iran, is because they believe that there was intelligence, Israeli intelligence,
Okay.
not our own intelligence, of furthering their nuclear capabilities.
So we didn't use any of our own intelligence. We just said, okay, Bibi, we're going to go where just draw the map where we should bomb, and we'll just go ahead and
Tulsi Gabbard under oath said they had no evidence of our own intelligence under oath. You're telling me everything changed in 2 months? We've been hearing the same thing, David, for 30 years. For 30 years, we've been hearing the same thing. And you're telling me it all changed in the last 2 months? Come on, give me a break.
Okay, let's go down that road. Let's just assume for a second this wasn't about nuclear weapons, and there was no nuclear weapons. Is it not true that on October 7th last year, that Hamas crossed over a border into Israel and murdered thousands of.
What does that have to do with Iran's nuclear capabilities?
Because they were backed by. No, I'm not talking about. I said we're going to pretend that there isn't any nuclear capabilities in Iran. What I'm telling you is Iran has been a sponsor. They are known. This isn't just Israeli intelligence. Iran is known. So do you agree that Iran is the largest state sponsor of terror in the world? Yes or no?
I do. But if you believe that and you're defending what Donald Trump did, then why is it all these years since the war in Ukraine, when Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, Donald Trump is the one that has put it on Ukraine and called Zelensky a dictator? If it is what you are saying is, well, they're harboring terrorists, that's exactly what Vladimir Putin does. And that's exactly what Putin did in invading Ukraine. But yet so many MAGA Republicans want Russia to win this war. They're a pro-Russian propaganda.
I don't know. I don't want Russia to win the war. I don't know any people personally that want Russia to win the war. I know personally.
Zelensky a dictator.
I don't know anything about Zelensky. I do know that I don't want billions of dollars of U.S. money going to Ukraine when we have people suffering in the United States that deserve that money more. That's my opinion.
So we deserve that money more when our allies are attacked and the country is under attack. We shouldn't be using that money to defend Ukraine. But yet in Iran,
ally in what? They're not in NATO. We're not sworn to protect
them. They're not our enemies. They're our friends.
Yeah, they could be friends, but it doesn't obligate us to defend them. They're not in NATO. We have no obligation to defend.
But we should defend Israel. How much money have we given Israel over the years? 400 billion, 500 billion?
Israel a lot of money.
Yeah. But why don't I hear you saying the same thing about Israel?
Brian, what would happen if we stopped supporting Israel?
What would happen if we stopped supporting Ukraine?
Well, we're seeing what would happen.
Ukraine would be gone.
Yeah. Well, and so would Israel. And
so don't complain that we're giving too much. Why is it that people like you always seem to complain about the money we give Ukraine, but then when it comes to Israel, I never hear you complaining about that? Why can't you be consistent? If you don't,
I've explained that. I've answered your question because my grandparents were Holocaust survivors, and
so it's about your family. So it's about your family.
No. What I'm saying is I have an affinity towards Israel because that's where.
So if it's personal to your family, it's okay. Do you realize how selfish that sounds?
No, you didn't let me finish my thought. What I'm telling you, Brian, is Israel was created to be a safe place in a world that is increasingly becoming anti-Semitic, and we have to defend that place because if not for defending Israel, the Jews wouldn't have a place to go. You know this to be true, Brian, or do you disagree? Is Israel not the rightful home of the Jewish people? Is it not worthy of being defended?
Well,
first of all, should we just give it away? Should we just not protect Israel anymore?
It's the same argument with Ukraine. Should we just give it away and let Vladimir Putin take over Ukraine?
Ukraine used to be part of it. Ukraine and Russia are more tied together than to make that argument is to suggest that defending Israel is the same to defending Ukraine. Is that the parallel you're making?
There are innocent people in Israel. There are innocent people in Ukraine. There are evil people in Iran that are running the government, and Vladimir Putin is evil, and that is an oligarchy. They are both identical in the sense that they have no regard for human life. Vladimir Putin wants to take over Ukraine. Iran wants to conquer Israel. They share two in the hand the same. If you have a problem with the money that we are using to defend Ukraine, then you should also have the same problem. Listen, David, regardless of what you say about your family, I understand it might be personal to you, but that can't change policy. If you have a problem with the money that we're sending to Ukraine that was invaded, then you should have the same problem with the money that we are using, the $400 or $500 billion that Israel owes us. Be consistent with your argument. That's all I'm asking. Whether we agree or disagree is one thing, but you can't be inconsistent and say, give them $500 billion, Israel, but Ukraine, you're on your own. You can't do that, David. That's not right.
Well, that's my opinion. Now, the United States government has not enacted policy consistent with my opinion. We've given $500 billion to Ukraine in the defense of Russia, and Trump is actively trying to negotiate peace between Russia and Ukraine. And when that finally happens, And when that happens, you're going to be mad at him for that too. When he's finally able to bring peace to Ukraine and Russia, you're going to be mad about that. You're going to be mad that there's peace between Iran and Israel. You hate him so much that no matter what he accomplishes, you still will find some reason to be angry about it.
What has he accomplished in the Ukraine-Russian war? Can you tell me what Donald Trump has accomplished, please?
What are you talking about?
What has he accomplished? He said the war would be over in 24 hours. In the first 4.5 months that Trump has been in office, can you please tell me what he's accomplished?
Between the Ukraine war and Russia?
Yeah. What has he done?
He has tried to he worked out a deal with Zelensky, and then Zelensky backed off of it. And the famous
They had a ceasefire deal in place, and Vladimir Putin wouldn't sign it.
Then they negotiated a ceasefire several times,
which Vladimir Putin never abided by.
There was a deal that was struck with Ukraine. We have raw earth. We negotiated the largest raw minerals deal with Ukraine, and we're also working with them to innovate on business, and we're building American interests in Ukraine. What do you think that's there for? Yes,
the war is no better off now than it was on day one since Donald Trump took office, and I don't understand what you want to give him credit for. The guy promised he would end the war in 24 hours, and you can't admit he's failed.
Fine.
And that doesn't,
because he didn't end the war in 24 hours, he's failed. Fine.
He's done nothing since he's day one in office.
He's done nothing. He hasn't sent.
What has he done
to talk to Russia and Ukraine almost every single day?
And how's that worked out?
It's ongoing, Brian. It's ongoing.
Oh, it's ongoing. Okay, it's ongoing. Okay, well, that's another word for saying nothing has been done yet. Nothing has been just because people are talking.
Okay, so what is he doing then? If he's doing nothing, so you think this is all a ruse?
He's just
golfing, hanging out in the White House and not doing anything.
I'll tell you what.
Vladimir Putin.
Well, yeah, he does play a lot of golf. He does play a lot of golf, but I will say this. Vladimir Putin has played Donald Trump in the same aspect that Benjamin Netanyahu has played Donald Trump. Netanyahu wanted us to be a part of this war. Bibi got what he wanted. Vladimir Putin has played Donald Trump. Trump has been more aggressive on Zelensky and Ukraine than Russia. Russia has given up nothing. And in the end, I think Russia is going to own land that they never had to begin with. And
that's probably going to be the outcome, actually.
And Donald Trump continues to coddle evil, murderous dictators. And the notion that because I criticize Donald Trump and I speak truth to power or give you facts that the bottom line is that the war is still going on in Ukraine. It's not any closer to a deal. And somehow that means that I don't want peace there is ridiculous. Let me tell you something. I don't want innocent people to die anywhere. It could be Gaza, Israel, Iran. I don't want innocent people to die in Ukraine. But what I really don't want is this to come to the United States of America and us getting involved in a war in the Middle East. We know this has been going on for 30 years where we've heard that they have these nuclear weapons. For 30 years, we've never had a president that has done what Donald Trump has done. And that doesn't make him a hero. It makes him an idiot is what he is. He's an idiot for getting us into this war. He's listened to with the Israeli intelligence. Part of the reason why we got into the war in Iraq in the first place, we had George W. Bush that got us into an ill-advised war. Name me the last Democrat president that got us into an ill-advised war. Why is it always Republicans? And why is it Donald Trump that's doing it?
I don't know. I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. I believe that what Donald Trump is doing is bringing peace to a region that doesn't look like it could have ever had peace. We saw an internal regime change in Syria. It is no longer harboring terrorists like it used to do. We're seeing opponents of the Iranian regime becoming emboldened. When they first rose up against the Iranian government, Biden abandoned them and didn't give them the support they needed to take their country back. Look, I think at the end of the day, Donald Trump is bringing peace to a region that sorely needs it. He's built relationships with Qatar, with Saudi Arabia. We are building allies and partnerships. And when he was in Saudi Arabia, if you heard his speech, what he said was, for the longest time, American governments have come over here and told you who should run your countries and what you should do and how you should live. This isn't the job of the United States. It's for you. And they applauded him. And that is the foreign policy he's putting into place now. Saudi Arabia, Oman, Yemen, all these places, they're taking control and leadership of the region, not the United States. Trump is bringing peace. And that's
Yemen's been bombed over the last month. And I can tell you that if this is what
Yemen is housing terrorists thanks to Iran.
If this is what peace looks like to you, when we see a war that's taking place in Ukraine that is further along, it's not getting any closer to an end. And we see what's going on in the Middle East right now. We see what's going on in Yemen right now. And if this is your definition of peace, then I really don't know what to say, because I am speechless. This is the opposite of peace. We've been told we've been told peace through strength. We've been told Donald Trump wouldn't get us into any new wars, but somehow bombing Iran and the Ukraine war continuing, and the fact that President Xi won't even pick up the phone to talk to Donald Trump, and you're claiming that this is peace. This is the opposite of peace.
And look, I like I said, I support 1,000% what Trump is doing in the Middle East. I thought,
Well, half the MAGA Republicans do not.
I know they're coming around once they saw the effectiveness of the strikes. We're not getting into war with Iran. There is no war in Iran that we're engaged in. We did a strategic strike to take out nuclear sites.
What was the effectiveness?
We have a ceasefire within 24 hours.
The ceasefire was broken 2 hours later.
The ceasefire is ongoing, and of course, we have two countries, as Donald Trump said this morning, that they don't know how to live next to each other.
Okay, well, I would say effective ceasefire is when there are no attacks. Again,
we're at least on the path, Brian. We're on the path, and that is the point. The point is, 24 hours ago, we didn't have a ceasefire. Now we have one, and it's thanks to Donald Trump. If it lasts, you're going to give him credit then, right? If it lasts, you're going to give him credit?
It was broken 2 hours.
Okay, but what if tomorrow it lasts? Are you going to give him credit? That's the question.
So if tomorrow neither country bombs one another, after a ceasefire was broken 2 hours into this deal, I'm supposed to give Donald Trump credit for it. We're supposed to celebrate?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Well, I would respectfully disagree, David. I know you got to run. We went longer than you needed to.
You always do. I come here for 10 minutes. I stay for half an hour. I come for half an hour. Stay for an hour and a half. But
that is true. That is true. David, I do appreciate a good debate. Got to do your podcast one of these days, brother. And I appreciate you coming on as always.